New 72 Radio, the voice, views, and visions of the collective.
Today, I have with me Dr. Stela Pavic and Rebecca Shaw, and I'm Dr. Len Young, and we are still recovering a little bit from our storms that have hit the southeast and certainly the islands, and we just send all of them our thoughts and prayers for a recovery and that they can get some help down to them more and quickly. But today we're going to talk about parenting. It's something that all three of us have experienced and continue to experience in different ways. We all have clients who are parents, and we all have children who have parents. So there are a number of ways we could approach this conversation, but we're going to just talk in terms of how a child could be happy and what is it that we do to hold a child back, and maybe make some suggestions of what we can do or what we have done in our experiences to help our children grow and be independent, interactive, and major parts of their communities. So, Stella, would you like to start us off today and talk a little bit about parenting with your 4 children and husband?
I'll try. So, it's a job in the process. Small children, as old people would say, and I didn't understand, would say small children a little worry, big children a bigger worry. And that saying in America. Do you have a similar?
No, I've never heard that. Have you, Rebecca?
No, but that is spot on, Stella, because when they're little and they're under your control all the time, that it's never ending, and then the more they're out of your control and they've got the car keys,
So my mother would come and visit me here, where all 4 of my girls would here, and I would running and changing the 4 diapers at the same time. I wouldn't have a moment for myself, and I would be exhausted. And my mother would come, look at me, smile to me, and says, "Hey, you don't know how happy you are. They are all under same roof."
Yeah.
I didn't know what she means until last year, when I have one girl's under one roof, the another girl under the living in the different towns and everything, and 2 others under my roof right now. I will give everything that they go to the school from my roof. But as life it is, we need to let them go. We need to let them be who they are from the beginning. I think the most important things with the parenting and overall, there is so many things about the parenting that we can touch. But I think that we should focus on the 4 more things that I learned is how we parenting the spirit of our children. What is the most important for each of us, for our children to become? And what I hear from a majority of the people is, I want them to be the good person. That's what I hear from my friends. I want them to grow up in the person that is not harmful to herself or to themselves or to the another. So majority of the normal parents, that's the goal, to see them to be able to succeed in the life, to provide for themselves and their family, to try to stay healthy spiritually and in the body, and to try to find a way in which they live the life as a merit, in the fulfillment. That's definitely what is the goal of the majority of the parents. And when we start to be the parents, some of us were ready, some of us are not ready at all. Some of the parents, they're having the children very young, being the children themselves, and that has nothing to do with age of the person. And there is that consensus in the psychology in which they would actually recommend authoritative parenting as the best method for the developing the children. Healthy authoritative parenting, in which we are supposed to put demands on our children depending of the strength of the children, requiring that bed in the morning is done. Not every time, not punishment when the bed is not done, but insisting on that routine, insisting on improvement of the child on the physical, spiritual, and mental level, to nourish them, to become the healthy, first the children, then adult, to make to have a strength in the life, to try to do the best in every moment, whatever the life is bringing to them. So the question for all of us is practically what we believe, that what mistake and what good things we believe that we can actually pull from our pool of experience that we can share with each other. So Len and Rebecca, what you can see in yourself that you believe that is good, that making your child a better person, or what is the things that you wanted or would recommend to avoid, that you notice in yourself that you were making mistake, not by knowing, but just as we are also growing as a human being. So
Rebecca, do you want to?
Sure. So I would say, when I think about parenting and what I would go back and do over again, or do more of, was or is allowing my child to understand a few different things. One is when they're misbehaving. Something that was really profound for me was understanding that sometimes when a child is misbehaving, it's their way of trying to solve a problem. So I have two children that are 15 months apart, and if the little one wanted the toy, he might hit his sister to get the toy. And instead of just doling out a punishment, it was helping him to understand that he was trying to solve a problem. He wanted that toy, and he thought if he hit his sister, then he'd get the toy and he'd solve his problem and have what he wanted. And so I had heard about saying to your children when they're misbehaving is that's not going to solve your problem. And I love that, because it doesn't give this connotation that you're bad. It just gives this understanding that you're doing something and it's really not producing the best result for you, especially because I would dole out a consequence. So that was one thing that I agree that just doling out punishments is difficult. You have to give consequences, but I think more than that, you have to really teach your children about understanding consequences. The other thing that I'm really big about is not, as parents, always lecturing. I think that was my thing, is to try to, I felt like I could talk my children into understanding how to behave better, or why doing homework is important, or so it's funny how we'll play these roles as parents, and mine was, I'm going to not yell, because that's not my way, but I'm going to talk and talk and talk until my children understand why it's better for them to be doing something different. Or we want to give them advice. My daughter went through the catty girl stage with friends, and she'd be upset all the time. And, I'm wanting to say, just, cut that girl out of your life or move on. And that doesn't work. And that turned into a lecture. And so I've learned over time to lecture less and to ask more questions. What do you, I can hear that you're frustrated. What are you going to do? And when you ask a child, or anyone, even adult, what are you going to do? It gets them thinking about the processing and maybe pulling from some of the advice that you've given. So I'm really big on thinking about how my communication with my children, is it empowering them, Is it, is it disempowering them? Am I keeping them in a place of me being the all-knowing person? Or how can I elicit their own inner resources that's going to help them when they are adults to solve their own problems?
Well, and so that actually leads me to a couple of things I hadn't thought as clearly about to mention. But my mother, bless my mother, she had gotten her master's in counseling at Columbia University just right after the war, World War II, and decided to be married and not go to work. And, there was a lot, at that time, a lot of women didn't work. And so it was her choice and it was the culture, but we benefited from her going through that program. And she has a wonderful approach to empowerment, that you would use that word, Rebecca, that from the very time I can remember all the way, and it must have been even before I was 1 year old, and I don't have those memories, she gave us choices. She would start to say, so here is what? One's green and one's yellow. Which one do you want? Here are 2 popsicles. Which one do you want? Well, do you want a popsicle? Or would you like a piece of fruit? And so there was this whole thing about making choices and having critical thinking and how do we go about doing things. And the other thing that she always said, and I'll say this as Mama because she was around us the most when Daddy was working, she would say anything was possible. And so we'd ask ridiculous questions like, well, can I fly? And she would say, well, it may look like it's impossible right now, but anything is possible. And then she'd say, and it's important to be safe. And her approach was always very open-minded. And as a result, I grew up that way. And when somebody says you can't do something, I think, oh yeah, who are you talking to? Of course I can do that. And then I think, whoa, maybe I can't do it in this situation perhaps, but could we change the situation? Or what can we alter that would make something possible when initially someone feels it's not possible? But it does give me an enormous open mind. So I did instill that. I remember repeating my mother's words to my children many times. I would like to bring up something, though, that I think can be detrimental to children that we are not even aware of. And I know I've done it. I mean, my daughter particularly feeds it back to me a little bit. And it's when we have negative speak that we're not even aware of, that might be ingrained from when we were little. So Mama never talked about our not overeating and watching our diet. We just always had 3 square meals a day, and it was the way we did in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And we've changed now. We don't always sit down for meals with our families, and we've lost some of that. But I know there's this, don't gain weight, you have to stay thin, instead of the approach of be healthy, do what's right for your body. And there's that mindset, and I know that repeats to me once in a while. So just like that, little things like, oh, you can't do that. Or, oh, darling, I know that you're trying to do math, but I know it's a struggle for you. Well, even talking about a subject being a struggle for a child puts it in their mindset. I'm struggling to do this. Instead of saying, let's figure out a way you can process this information and how can you better understand it and where can we find the help for it? And so if we become aware of our own words, what we say to our children, it makes a big difference in how they respond and how they think about themselves, how they go on in the world and what they can accomplish. So that comes in the idea of bringing up the spirit, Stella, what you were talking about, and also thinking about how we, on an ongoing basis, welcome that spirit to come forward and be the intuitive part, the knowing part, the listening to the inner self, because there are times when that's all we have to depend on in one of these situations that might be an immediate surprise to us. So what do you think about that? I mean, do you have any feedback to that, Stella?
I would just like to go a little bit back. I think in in the parenting, in the busy life that we have with the work, with the house, with the friends, with the professionality, with idea, with everything, the biggest advice I would love to give whoever is a parent, independently of the age of the child, do not think that your child is you. That means that you have to be mature enough to understand that you are not supposed to believe that your child will not do certain mistake just because you teach them about that. So let me explain this a little bit more. Our children, our girls, our boys, our college children. So when I say children, I says from age of the 4 or 5 all the way to the 22, 23, 26 until brain is developed in the full. They are they live in very dangerous time. They are exposed through the social media and internet to the things that we were never exposed that they existing. Those exposure, pictures exposure, music exposure, television exposures are changing their mind, changing the chemistry and changing the thinking process of them. The things they are supposed to be forbidden with any logics, and they could be very dangerous for them. With those changes and those exposure that they have, actually, they may harm them acutely and chronically. They changing the chemistry of the brain, and they may find themselves and exposed and placed in the situation that looks like an innocent situation, look like exciting situation, but it's definitely very harmful for our children. So I'm strongly urging every parents that may listen this or later on listen this, pick up the phone of your child. Go ahead and see what our children are exchanging in today's world on those snaps, Twitter, Facebook, Google, and other accounts that you even do not know about. Be responsible and have a right to do not have a child be authority to you. You do have a right to see what and who your child is communicating and what is the level of the communication that is happening with the friends and everything. Because today's society is bringing our children on the edge from the every possible level of what human means. So be cautious, exceptionally, be ready that you will find the things that you never believed that your child would expose your family to. And be vigilant, be awake. Do not let yourself happen to find that you were sleeping and you awake in a nightmare, because the naked pictures that the children exchanging between themselves in the Charleston area, the report was done that 30% of our high school children are sending between themselves some kind of the inappropriate pictures. Find them. When you find them, the way the children do not understand what's happening, you will need then psychological help. You will need to start to read and educate yourself, quiet a bit, to be able to come to the core of the soul of your child, to start to expose those things. They were presented to them as an innocence, as a progressive, but they are actually having and are going to have quite a bit of the tool on our kids. So this is the things that I would love to mention the parents that I learned that needs to be done. And the second things, what I think that I did good as a parents is I tell them they are winner all the time, that there is nothing absolutely that they cannot achieve or do, but they need to do it. So I ask them every day, did you do it? You have great idea. Did you make your bed? Did you? And I'm not mad on them if they are not, but I motivate them every day. Did you read? Did you study? Go ahead. You can do whatever you want. You want to be painter? Do it. go for your merit. Do not go for the money. Money will come if you have a merit.
That's actually really great. I wanted to bring up something too here. Those are really good words of wisdom, because parenting today is so different from parenting 50 years ago, 30 years ago. And I remember coming up with some of the limitations that we had. We had one of the very first personal computers. Caroline was born the year the personal computer came out. And so that says it's 34 years old. And it's just so hard to believe that now we don't live without them. It's just an amazing thing. But we evolved with it. And I'll never forget when MTV came in, and there was such provocative vision on it that I didn't take it. And so of course in came the children. We're the only family who can't watch MTV. I said, well, I'm sorry about that. So I finally brought it in when I moved houses, and no one ever watched it. It was great because they were used to not watching it. So they are older now. If they want to watch MTV, they're in their 30s. They're welcome to do that. They have a lot better grounding of how to judge what they're seeing. So well said about that. I do want to just bring up, how we're talking about everything. We have about 10 minutes more, and we are so fortunate to be able to approach parenting with healthy children. But when you have something that surprises you, like a Down syndrome, a child with Down syndrome, or a child with some learning disability or inability to be in the system that we've all agreed to live within, it puts you in a place as a parent where you can't think even as clearly as we're thinking, because teaching in the same way is different. Your child doesn't process the fact that you might say, you're a winner, or you're wonderful, and you can think about this, and can I give you choices? They don't even know what red is if I ask between red and blue. So we won't go into all of that today, but I just want to acknowledge that perhaps our next conversation can be about when you are thrown a loop, what happens to your family? Because that child takes all the attention. The children who don't have the issues don't get the attention that you would normally give in that. And so the whole family becomes skewed a little bit. And we can all speak from personal experience with our clients, within our families, how we've dealt with some of this. How do you look at medications? What are medications today? What are they doing to the children? How early should you start? How can they learn otherwise? How are they in the world? And what can help change? And once again, I think anything's possible. So it is important to know about all of that. I wanted to, we actually had addressed the idea of what else do we do to help our children come along, and about critical thinking. And perhaps what we can take an example of something that was really difficult for us and address it personally, just in this last little bit. Rebecca, do you have something that comes to mind you could address, maybe one specific situation?
Well, I think, every family has their challenges. For me, it was growing up with an alcoholic father. So I think something I'm really passionate about in teaching our children is what I would call emotional health. And because again, if we have someone around us going through something stressful, as children, we'll have our own set of emotions about it. And if we don't teach our children how to healthily manage anger, or deal with anger, or deal with sadness, deal with anxiety, kids tend to just suppress it or disown it, ignore it. In previous decades, and maybe even today, some parents just say, get over it, or I'll give you something to cry about. And I really see this in my practice in hypnotherapy, that as adults, we weren't taught emotional fitness. So that's why many of the addictive habits come on, because it's our way of just suppressing emotions. And I believe as a culture, if we would teach our children there's no bad emotion. If an emotion is coming up, it's coming up for a reason. Let's look at that. What's the thinking behind that emotion? And so looking at things that feel bad, because as children, we have the simplistic mind. If it feels bad, it is bad. So if an emotion feels bad, it is bad. But I want children to know and adults to know that that's not the truth. If something feels bad, that emotion is coming up for a reason. It's bringing up some inner wisdom, some deeper insights, and to coach your children how to move through a stressful emotion in a positive way. And hopefully that would maybe lead to less drug abuse and more healthy relationships if we can sort of embrace that whole concept and teach it to our children.
Oh, I think that's beautiful.
It's great.
And Stella, do you have any final words, and then I'll wrap up?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Love each other.
Ah, yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. I think that's the healer and the medication for exactly those emotions. As long as children feels on the end that they have a mother, father, or aunt, or friends, or somebody who will always dearly hold them, as we love to have that in our life as well, until I think that we are a society that is able to move forward. So I think the love is that emotion toward ourselves and toward the people around us, who actually is bringing us to the better world. So.
And your point is well taken about the community, because in your family you have a community, and then as you move out with friends and extended family, they're your community. And it's really fortunate if you have that. If you don't, then pay attention to those who are around you. If somebody doesn't have a family, does it feel comfortable bringing them into your community so they can feel they have an extended family of some sort? Because that love is really what is going to heal our planet and help us get through the challenges of the time. Speaking of that, I think what we'll do the next time we talk with you is we have this wonderful season of celebrations coming up in November and December, and we can talk about flu season and how you stay healthy. What do you do in order to make sure your whole family and you are enjoying the season rather than in bed? And also we will discuss families who have challenges and how can we help, how can each of us help that? How do you even take a look at the seeking and the desire of a parent to have what appears to be a typical or normal child instead of one with challenges? So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again in November.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.